Hi, this is Gloria Donahue with Nana's Cookery, or welcome, or maybe welcome back to the kitchen. It's always a pleasure to have you come. Today I'm going to make coconut custard pie, which is one of my husband's favorites. And I'm sure you may have seen recipes for coconut custard pie and coconut cream pie. There is a difference. A coconut custard pie is milk and ingredients baked in an unbaked pie crust in the oven. A coconut cream pie, on the other hand, you would bake the pie crust, bring it out, make a separate pudding that has coconut in it, then put it in, and you would either top that with meringue or whipped cream. But this is a coconut custard pie that has a little trick at the end with a little extra topping, so I'm really excited to show you. An unbaked 9-inch pie crust, a half cup of sugar, 4 eggs, 3½ ounces of coconut, salt, vanilla, milk, butter, brown sugar. Now that we have all of our ingredients together, we're going to start making the pie, which goes together very quickly. You're going to start with an unbaked 9-inch pie crust. You can use your own favorite recipe. It would just be regular pie crust, not anything sweetened or with egg or anything. Or you can do what I do, and that's go to my first video where I make pie crust with canola oil. And this pie crust goes together in about 5 minutes in a wonderful crust. I made one mistake today in that I rolled it out and I put it in and I started poking it with a fork, which you do when you're baking a pie crust, what they call blind, and that means an empty crust. And that keeps the air from coming up and making bubbles. But I didn't have to do that because I'm going to put a filling in it. So you don't need to do that. So then I had to carefully go over and sort of seal up all of that. But this is it. This is an unbaked 9-inch pie crust. Then we're going to have in our mixture half a cup of regular sugar. We're going to have 1/4 of a teaspoon of regular salt. We're going to have a teaspoon of vanilla, and 4 eggs. And I know if you watch my show regularly, you know my rule on eggs. I always do it one at a time in a cup before I put it in the bowl, because I have never had a year that I went without getting a little shell in it. And believe me, it's much easier to get the shell out before you have it in the mixture. And if you do get a little shell in, just use the shell itself to get out that little piece. And that will work. Hey folks, so far so good. 3 out of 4. 4 out of 4. You know, eggs separate better when they're cold if you're going to beat egg whites for something and all, but they blend better when they're room temperature. So we're going to blend that together. And I'm just using a whisk. And now I'm going to pour in 2½ cups of regular milk that is scalded. And scalded means you've heated it enough, not to a boil, but that you're starting to get bubbles around the edges. I use 2% milk, and that seems fine with this. If you use less than 2% milk, because all of my original recipes that are 30, 40 years old, I'm sure they were all using regular milk, which is 4% fat. And fat, the difference of fat in milk can make a difference in how something comes together in something that you make. So the 2% I find is fine, but if you use skim or 1%, I would add a little bit of butter to this because I think you need a little more fat. So we'll pour the milk, and I'm just going to whisk it as I do it. You may not need to scald milk anymore. In the old recipes, it has something to do with the enzymes, but if it's an old recipe and it calls for it, I do what it says. You have to remember, there is always a reason in a recipe. If they have you do something in a certain order, there is a reason for it. It's not just fate. It's something because something either comes together better, or that it needs this temperature or this much time. So particularly when you're baking, there's not a whole lot of flexibility in the way that you do things. It's really better to follow what they say. Now, I'm not going to put all the coconut in the pie. It says reserve a ½ cup because we're going to use that ½ cup later. So I'm going to put the rest in and stir it in. Now it's possible if I were not doing a topping, if I were doing another recipe, that I would have more coconut in here because I wouldn't be using more on the top. But this is what we're going to do. And to be honest, you're not going to see me pour this into the pie crust because this is so liquidy and it's going to come up pretty high. I'm going to do what I do when I'm just cooking myself, and that is I take it as close as I can to the oven, put it on the counter and pour it there because you have to move it very carefully into the oven. Well, our coconut custard pie is out of the oven. It's done when you take a metal knife and put it about halfway between the center and the crust, and it comes out clean because that means the custard has set. Now we're going to mix 2 tablespoons of, and the pie has cooled. So we're going to mix 2 tablespoons of soft butter with 1/4 cup of light brown sugar and the reserved coconut, which was 1/2 cup. We're just going to mix that all in. So I'll add the coconut and then we'll continue to mix. And then we're just going to put it in little bits and pieces over the pie. We're going to put it in a broiler. And remember, whenever you put anything in the broiler, watch it very carefully because nothing takes very long when it's done under the broiler. And you want to make sure that you don't burn it, but you'll start to see the sugar glisten and bubble. And it's a different way for a coconut custard pie. Many coconut custard pies you would buy would have more coconut in the pie and nothing on top. But this is the one that I've made for years that we enjoy, so this is what I do. And it's just sort of a little different. And it comes from a Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, which I'm embarrassed to show you because it's my second copy that I bought as a used cookbook in Port Townsend, Washington in the 90s. Having bought my first one probably in the 70s. So it's always fun to go and get cookbooks. But I must say you could probably lick some of the pages of mine because I've said this before, whenever you go to buy cookbooks from an estate sale or something, go for the ones that look really messy because they're the ones they really used. So I'm just going to sort of spread this out a little, and you'll see. I'm going to put this in the broiler, and I'll show you when it's done. Our coconut custard pie is out of the oven. It's cooled. We've put the topping on it, and it broiled. And this is a piece of the cut pie. I'm already eating a little bit. It was great to see you again. Bye-bye.